The jump master's hand dropped, and Joshua Hayes stepped into the orange void. Wind screamed past his helmet. The chute snapped open, a white bloom against a sky of rust and ash below. 40,000 acres of forest burned, but at the center, a single green circle remained, and inside it, a cabin.
He hit the ground hard, knees absorbing the shock on grass that should have been ash. The cabin stood pristine, the fire repelled. Its windows glowed with warm light, a beacon in the ash.
He moved toward the door. It swung open without resistance. Inside, the air was still and dust-free. On every wall, dozens of clocks.
All set to the same time. 4:13 p.m., his exact landing time.
He checked his watch. 4:13. The coincidence stopped his breath.
Every clock in this impossible cabin was frozen at the minute he fell from the sky.
He ran a gloved finger along the mantel. Not a speck of soot. The clock's brass pendulum hung motionless at 4:13.
This was impossible. He needed to radio it, in before the smoke thickened. Command, this is Hayes. I've got a structure, a frame, pristine, no burn damage at all.
Negative, Hayes. That grid square is empty. Satellite shows 0 structures, past or present.
I am standing inside it. Clocks all over. They're all set to my drop time.
Say again. Hayes, confirm your condition. Are you injured?
The question landed like a slap. They thought he was hallucinating.
He keyed the mic to argue, but a blast of hot wind rattled the window pane. He went to the window. The fire had shifted, cutting off his planned egress route.
No escape before dark. He'd have to stay here, inside this clock-filled anomaly.
Dusk fell. He lit a lantern, its glow a small island against the blackening sky.
From the window, he watched the fire, a wall of flame that stopped exactly at the green edge, refusing to advance.
He cracked the window. No blast of heat, no suffocating smoke, just the scent of pine and old wood.
This wasn't luck. The fire acted like it was held back by a leash.
He glanced at the nearest clock. 4:13. His own watch confirmed the minute. Still frozen.
Time itself felt like a trap here, circling the same seconds.
He paced, boots quiet on the clean floor. The cabin seemed untouched by age or disaster.
He needed to search every corner. There had to be a reason for this place.
He opened cupboards, found canned food, a fresh water pump, but no sign of an owner.
He was alone with the clocks and whatever kept the fire at bay.
His search ended at the kitchen table. A leather-bound logbook lay open, waiting. He picked it up, the weight familiar. The handwriting on the page stopped him cold.
His own slant, his own pressure on the pen, but he'd never written in this book.
The date at the top of the entry was tomorrow, the 13th of August, 2022. Jump day. I know now it never ends. Joshua Hayes.
The ink was dry, the page worn. It had been waiting for him to arrive.
He slammed the book shut. The thud echoed through the silent cabin.
When he opened it again, the words remained undeniable. A message from himself. This cabin knew his name before his chute opened. It had prepared for him.
He stared at his own name, written by a hand that hadn't yet lived through this night. The message described his jump, the cabin, the clocks, every detail too precise for anyone else.
It ended with a promise. Tomorrow I will jump again, and the loop will tighten.
He turned to the front. The pages before were blank, as if waiting to be filled from the future.
Only this one entry existed, sealed with his name and dated for a day not yet lived. He ran a thumb over the ink. It was old, embedded in the paper, not fresh. If he had written this, he had done it in another life, another loop. The cabin had a plan for him, and it expected him to jump again tomorrow.
He set the logbook down, his hands steady now, a cold resolve replacing the shock.
He would not jump tomorrow. He would stay and break whatever pattern held him.
The decision gave him no comfort. The clocks still read 4:13, and the fire still burned outside. He keyed the mic once more, desperate for a human voice. Any voice. Only static answered. Then, buried in the hiss, syllables formed. Can't change it. The whisper was a broken mirror of his own tone.
He slammed the handset down. That was his own voice. Older, worn thin by repetition.
He paced, checking every shadow, every corner of the cabin. Nothing moved but the fire outside.
The clock's frozen faces seemed to watch. 4:13, 4:13, 4:13, a ritual of stillness.
He tried to write a warning in the logbook, but the pen wouldn't leave ink. The page rejected him.
The book already knew what he would write. It had no room for changes.
He gave up, exhaustion finally peeling away his nerve. He lay on the bench, parachute as blanket. Sleep came broken. Dreams of falling through orange sky, landing again and again on green grass. Each time, the cabin doors opened, and the clock struck 4:13 with a sound that felt like his own heartbeat. Gray light seeped through the window. The fire had shrunk to a smoldering ring, the clearing still untouched. He gathered his equipment, movements mechanical. The logbook he left on the table, not looking back.
The cabin was a question he didn't want to answer. He just wanted out.
He reached for the handle, and the door stuck. Every clock in the room chimed 4:13 simultaneously. A single chime, then silence. The door jerked open under his weight, and he stumbled into the cold air. Behind him, the door slammed shut. The cabin had closed itself off, satisfied.
He stood on the green grass, his breath steaming. The fire ring glowed like a distant crown.
No pull to return, just the road ahead and the promise of an extraction helicopter.
He would never speak of this. The logbook, the voice, the frozen hour, buried.
But as he signaled the distant helicopter, a clock inside the cabin ticked once, then stopped. The helicopter's rotor blast flattened the grass, a rope ladder unrolling from the open door. He climbed, each rung a step away from the impossible green circle below. Inside the cabin, the pilot handed him a canteen and glanced at the smoldering fire below.
That sector's acting strange. Fire just stops at the edge. Never seen it hold like that.
Joshua drank, his gaze fixed on the green circle shrinking in the window's reflection.
If he said anything, the loop might tighten. Silence was his only shield.
The helicopter banked north, and the cabin dissolved into the smoke like a dream. At base, he filed his report. Standard drop, no anomalies. The words felt like ash in his mouth.
He had buried the truth. Now he had to live with it.
That night he stared at his locker. The logbook's date echoed, tomorrow. But for him, it had already passed. 3 years passed. He took the spotter promotion, trading the chute for a desk, but the cabin never left his periphery. A wall clock stopped at 4:13 one afternoon. Maintenance called it a fluke. A news clip of Montana fire made his hands clench. He answered debriefs with curt monotone. The secret calcified inside him like old burn scar. Then came the routine, Tuesday. He opened the intake queue, swiping through faces of kids who'd never seen a burn.
Just another batch of rookies, until the photo stopped his thumb.
Name, Joshua Hayes. Birth date his own. Face from a mirror 12 years ago. Clean-shaven and fearless, the tablet weighed suddenly 20 pounds. He placed it down like an explosive, but the image clung.
This couldn't be. The cabin found him again.
He scrolled past the photo. Jump coordinates matched the green circle exactly. Next week, the loop was not done. It had been patient, a fire waiting for the season. He opened the full dossier. The handwriting sample was a dead match for the logbook. Same slant, same pressure.
The same hand had written both entries, separated by years, but identical.
He searched personnel records. No twin, no duplicate social, Only one Joshua Hayes had ever existed. The emergency contact on the intake form was his own mother. The loop was airtight.
He had to stop this. A cancel flag might break the pattern or cost him everything.
He logged into the spotter override portal. The system prompted for confirmation. Cancel jump for Hayes, J.
If nothing happened, he was insane. If something did, he was right. Both options terrified him.
The recruit's photos stared from the corner of the screen, patient and unblinking. He pressed confirm. The screen flickered once, then went black. For 3 heartbeats, nothing. Then the system rebooted with a message he couldn't outrun. The screen flared green. A single line pulsed. Ogroids denied. Jump already complete. Below it, a timestamp, frozen. 3 days ago. The recruit had already dropped.
The loop hadn't needed his permission. It had simply executed.
He opened the mission log. Jumper Hayes, J, completed drop at 16:30. No anomalies. The younger him had landed in the green circle, survived the cabin, and vanished into the system.
And he, the older version, was still here, unchanged, as if the jump had never happened.
The loop was self-sustaining. Every cancellation attempt would fail because the jump was already part of his past.
He was both the jumper and the spotter, both the cause and the effect.
The recruit file now read active, but the photo was gone, replaced by a generic icon. The duplicate had been absorbed. The cabin had never been a question. It was an answer, one he had already given. He pulled the full mission report. Boilerplate text, no mention of the cabin, just coordinates and return time. He searched personnel records for the younger Hayes. The file was empty, purged except for the jump date.
The system had erased him, leaving only the loop's signature. A single active status and no photo.
In the break room, an old crew photo hung on the wall. 1989, a rookie with his face. He stared at it, the frame dusty. The smile identical to the intake photo from yesterday.
How many times had he stood there, staring at his own past, unaware he was looking at a previous self?
The loop was not just a cycle. It was a family tree with only one branch, repeating the same growth. He left the records room, not checking for more evidence. The truth was already enough.
He was the keeper of his own origin, and he would never know the first page.
The cabin was back there, waiting. And next season, another intake file would appear. He opened his email. 2 lines he typed. "Sir, the cabin is real. I can't explain," but then he deleted them. The cursor blinked. A confession would only spread the loop. He logged off. He walked to his locker, the one he hadn't opened since the debrief. The combination came from muscle memory. Inside, his old Nomex suit still smelled of smoke, and beneath it, the logbook. He lifted it out. The cover read, Hayes J, Season 9. He had left this in the cabin.
It shouldn't be here, but nothing about this was ever should.
He flipped it open. A fresh entry bled across the page in his own hand. Next year, same place. See you.
The loop was polite. It RSVP'd him without asking.
He closed the logbook, not angry, just exhausted. He put it back in the bag, zipping it shut. The cabin would be there next season. And he would be, too. He was sure of that now. Months later, after another season of training rookies, he sat at his spotter desk as dusk fell. The screen flickered. A new intake file populated automatically. Hayes, J, jump 10. Same coordinates, same circular grid he hadn't entered in 4 years.
He stared at the photo, a face as familiar as his own shaving mirror.
He opened the cancellation tab. His cursor hovered over the red button. Then he closed it. No override, no flag. He simply let it rest.
The loop had earned his consent. Not surrender, just acknowledgement.
He logged off. The screen went black, reflecting only his calm expression. A single tear traced the soot lines he'd worn since that first jump. He didn't wipe it. The job tomorrow would be waiting, with or without his signature. He was finally okay with that. He dreamed of falling again, the chute snapping open above a wall of flame, but this time without fear. Below, the green circle and the cabin waited. He saw himself already inside, staring up, patient. The clocks chimed 4:13, and the sound rippled through both versions, a thread binding them across time. He woke in his own bed, the smoke from a distant fire painting the window a faint, pulsing orange.
He rose without hurry, brewed coffee, and stood at the window, hands warm around the mug, watching the glow.
Outside, the Bob Marshall wilderness stretched dark and indifferent beneath the stars, the fire a distant heartbeat. He thought of the loop, the logbook, the self he would meet again next season, and felt no dread. In the clearing, the cabin door gently closed without a hand, as it always did, sealing the pact. The warm light inside faded, leaving only the green circle, a scar of defiance in the blackened woods. Some fires never go out. They just change shape. 1 year later, the green circle was waiting. A parachute snapped open above it, white against the orange smoke. The recruit hit the grass, confused. No firebreak, just a pristine cabin where smoke should have reigned. He approached the door, which stood open. Inside, an older man at the table, writing in a logbook.
"Who are you?" The question hung in the dustless air like a note of a forgotten song.
He looked up. "I am you, and it's time you learned." The pen stopped.
The older man closed the logbook, stood, and gestured to the clocks. All read 4:13, as they always would. The recruit stepped over the threshold, the warmth of the cabin swallowing him like a slow tide. The door swung shut without a sound, sealing the loop for another season, another self. Inside, the clocks remained still at 4:13, as they had since the first thread unwound. Outside, the green circle endured, a scar that would never heal, a promise that would never break. The older Joshua closed the logbook, the thud a period at the end of a long sentence. The recruit stared at the clocks. Every face read 4:13, the stillness a language he couldn't yet speak.
He glanced at his own watch. 4:13 p.m., the same minute that had followed him since his chute opened.
The older man nodded. "You'll understand someday, but not today. Now, you jump."
The recruit, in a daze, hoisted his parachute pack as if he'd done it 1,000 times, and he had, somewhere. He moved to the door. It opened for him without friction, the green circle waiting outside. The door stayed open behind him as the recruit walked to the center of the clearing. His chute would catch the sky again. Inside, the older Joshua remained. He would wait for the next season, the next self, the next page. He picked up the pen and opened the logbook. A fresh page. He began to write. The ink dried instantly, as if the loop had already accepted the new entry. He finished the entry with a question he'd never answer. Was there a first version? Or is it always this way? He set the pen down and stood. Through the window, the fire ring had receded, leaving the green circle as a permanent scar. He walked to the door, paused, then stepped out onto the grass that never browned. His boots left prints in the ash at the clearing's edge, the first steps of a longer journey. He didn't look back. The open door behind him was an invitation to the next version. The cabin stood peaceful, door ajar, the light inside dim but still burning. It would wait. It always did, through fire and seasons, through lifetimes. From above, the green circle remained, a defiant scar in the blackened woods, a promise of recurrence. Inside, the clocks still read 4:13, their hands frozen at the one moment that held infinity. The door stayed open, and the green circle endured. The loop had neither beginning nor end. Months later, a news report flickered on the break room television. A cabin discovered in the Montana burn zone, all clocks frozen at 4:13. Joshua watched without expression. The green circle had finally been found, but its secret remained his alone. A colleague asked if he'd ever seen anything like that. Joshua didn't look up from his screen.
"It's just a cabin."
He returned to his intake queue. A new file populated automatically. Hayes, J, Jump 11. The photo was his own face, identical to every version before, the name a refrain he knew by heart.
He felt no shock, only the quiet weight of a promise kept across seasons.
He opened the file, not to cancel, but to approve. The loop required neither consent nor defiance. He typed his authorization, the cursor blinking at 4:13 p.m., as it always did. He closed the file. The loop would deliver another jumper next season, and he would be there to spot it, as he always had. Across decades, the sky over Montana repeated the same image: a parachute, a face, a green circle untouched by fire. In 1947, in 1963, in 1989, a jumper with Joshua's features landed, each time believing it was the first. They approached the cabin with the same wariness, opened the door to the same clocks, all reading 4:13. Inside, the logbook awaited, and their hands wrote the same entry: Jump Day. It never ends. The old crew photo on the wall held their faces, a gallery of identical men spanning 80 years. They became spotters. They aged, and when their time came, they returned to the cabin, the loop unbroken. And in the final stillness, the original, if there was an original, sat at the table, the logbook thick with repetition. He closed the logbook, his hands gnarled, but the motion familiar as a heartbeat.
He whispered, "The circle is complete," but the clocks held at 4:13, refusing to advance.
Outside, the green circle endured, a scar that would never heal, a promise that would never break. The old man stood, his bones creaking a liturgy of past fires. He shuffled to the door, pausing before the wall of clocks. They held their 4:13 vigil, a circle within a circle. Beyond the door, the forest had regrown. A young pine stood where the fire once raged, the green circle now a meadow. He stepped out, boots on the eternal grass, and the door closed behind him. Without a whisper, he walked into the charcoal tree line, his form dissolving into the shadows of regrowth. Above, a speck appeared in the sky, a parachute blooming, white against the orange smoke, a new jumper arriving. The young man landed, his face identical, his confusion familiar. He stared at the cabin as if it called his name. The cabin's door remained shut, but the warm light inside pulsed once, a silent welcome to the next keeper. The old Joshua did not look back. His steps were light, his burden gifted to the next self. The loop would continue, the green circle, a constant heartbeat beneath Montana's sky, the cabin its still sanctuary. At sunset, the cabin settled into the green circle, its door still ajar, warm light spilling onto the grass. Inside, a single clock's second hand twitched. For the first time in 80 years, it moved. It ticked slowly, reaching toward 4:14, the forbidden minute, but before it could lock into place, the hand glitched, jerking backward, like a raindrop reversing. It settled at 4:13. The loop rejected the new number. The cabin door, as if sensing the attempt, drew itself closed with a soft final click. The warm light inside dimmed, leaving only the green circle under a bruising sky. Outside, the green circle held, a scar of defiance in the blackened woods, as the sun bled orange. Fade to black. Text appears. Some fires never go out. The cabin waited, its clocks eternal, for the next jumper, the next season, the next self.